Thank you. So hi, everybody. In case you haven't met me, we haven't met each other, or you need a reminder, I'm Rosa Maimi, the Director of Engagement and Membership here at AGU. And this is our first section leader support call of the year. As you all saw, you probably got monthly meeting invites for each of them. We're now changing up the usual cadence from last year. They're now still in the same, the last week of the month, but they may be at different times, different days of the week, so that we can accommodate different schedules. So we are really thrilled to have everyone here for this first one. And again, the purpose of these calls, in case you hadn't heard before, is that these are kind of more operational in nature, really helping you give you information you need from each other as sections and also from staff to help you do your jobs and help you with your roles as section leaders. So we always want to hear from you in terms of what you want to hear from us. So you're going to hear me keep making that plug. But why don't we go ahead and get started? Why don't we go to the next slide? So I'm going to turn it over to Amber before we go through the agenda, who's our VP of Affiliation, Engagement, and Membership, so she can welcome us in our first meeting of the year.
Thanks, Rosa. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. I know I saw quite a few of you at the council meeting, which is hard to believe that was just a few short weeks ago. It feels much farther away at this point, but really excited to see you again. And can't wait to work with you throughout this year to better support you, as Rosa mentioned. Just a couple of things I'll highlight quickly because I know we have quite a bit to cover today. We talked a lot, about partnership during the council meeting. And so we're really, really committed to that. We're taking it seriously. And so I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. The first was that you heard a report out at the council meeting about the first phase of membership research that was conducted. And since that time, we've actually continued to move into phase 2. And as part of that process, we had a workshop a couple weeks ago, and we actually had 4 section leaders participate with staff in partnership during that workshop. It was a small group of about 9 people in total. It was intended to be small because of the nature of the work that we were doing, but we really are committed to continually involving you all in this process and making sure that member voice is front and center. So that was just one quick update, and we'll continue to make sure that we keep you updated on that work. And then the second thing is I'm incredibly excited because today we're going to be hearing from one of you, our section leaders. And as Rosa mentioned, we're really committed also to making sure that this time we spend together is really beneficial peer-to-peer, right? Not just staff talking with you, but also hearing from each other. So we'd love to hear what you think about this, and we'll continue to seek your input, but just thrilled to be working with you. And with that said, I will turn it back to you, Rosa.
Thanks so much, Amber. We appreciate it and appreciate the update around the membership research. I know there's a lot of great energy around it, so you'll be hearing more for sure. So we've got the agenda here. As Amber mentioned, we're going to do section spotlights every month. So I would love to hear from you in terms of what you'd like to hear and talk to each other about, but also I may be reaching out to you all and asking for your help. So there's always going to be one of these or more on each of these calls every month. And this time we have Kevin Reed from Science and Society, who's going to talk a little bit about collaborations with AGU. We're also going to start the conversation, which we probably will do on almost every call going toward the fall meeting, or and AGU 23 is section event planning for fall meeting. We want to make sure we get that right. We want to make sure we're closely aligned with what your goals are. And there's actually going to be a poll during that session where we're going to ask you what your goals are. So be ready to participate in that. And then if we've got time, I'm going to do a very quick honors nomination update. The deadline is April 12th. Please get the word out to your colleagues and networks and nominate if you're eligible to nominate. I will say our numbers are low, and I'll get to that later. And then we'll do open mic, all of this in an hour. So let's see how that goes. So why don't we go ahead and turn it over to Kevin. I think the first slide, next slide coming up here. There you go. So Kevin, if you're ready, we are ready for you.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, thank you. So Well, first, let me make a quick comment, which is I am kind of on the road today, so I'm working in a weird space in which I have a very anxious dog next to me who is very excited for his mom to come home at any moment. So I apologize if there's barking in the background. But what I thought I would do, as mentioned, is I'm the president of the Science and Society section. And in order to kind of facilitate this initial discussion around a spotlight and how our section engages with AGU broadly and AGU staff, I thought just as one of the newer sections within AGU, I would spend just a few minutes providing an overview of our section, because I suspect many of you have heard of us, but I thought it would be helpful just to provide a quick overview. So if you could go to the next slide. So as a reminder, the Science and Society section within AGU really works kind of towards two main goals. The first is to support and grow a community of that really actively facilitates stronger connections between societies and earth and space sciences. And so really this is one of those areas in which we have kind of a bridge, I guess what I would call the outside world, right? The world outside of AGU. And that really means different disciplines, like of course, all of our sections interact with different disciplinary groups outside of AGU, but also connections directly with boundary organizations and society groups and community groups and things like that. And I'll talk a little bit about how we work through that and how we work with AGU in doing that. In addition, we kind of really help to foster innovations within AGU, particularly that focuses on enabling discoveries, but also solutions in the geoscience, to benefit humanity. And so that's really where, right, it's kind of the use-inspired aspect. How do we work with different groups to help facilitate all of our different types of scholarship within the section? So if you could go to the next slide. So one of the ways that sometimes the advantage of being a relatively new section is that you have the opportunity to define yourself outside of the historical way in which your section's been defined. And so one of the ways that we did that early on, and this wasn't something that I was involved with, it's really thanks to the past president, Julie Vano, as well as past presidents who really helped to lead this effort. But in the early couple of years of our section, we organized ourselves into kind of 5 main tracks. And the idea is that these are meant to be initial tracks, that they could change over time, and they certainly will change, of course, as our membership evolves and as the needs of AGU and the broader society evolve. But thus far, we've organized ourselves into these tracks called Art and Science, Community and Citizen Science, Science Communication, Science Policy, and Social and Behavioral Science. And so I think you could see right here from just these 5 different tracks that they're quite broad. And if we were to do any sort of Venn diagram overlap with activities in other sections and beyond, that it would be quite high in terms of the overlap. But what we try to do through these sections is a couple quick things. We try to help provide a space for, you could imagine, a social behavioral scientist that typically doesn't come to AGU or participate in AGU meetings or activities, that this is kind of a quote unquote home for them within AGU. So it kind of, again, acts a little bit as that kind of boundary pathway for AGU to interact more broadly with different disciplines. And, science communication, for example, let's use that. That can be an example of course, aspects of working with AGU staff to help scientists become better communicators, right, of our research, of our important discoveries and solutions that our community develops. But also it's a place for folks that study the science of communication, right, which is its own discipline. That could also, if there's a home for these type of individuals that work in that, for example, in the area of geophysical sciences, it's an opportunity to interact with them directly within the membership of AGU. And so these are how we've organized ourselves for now. We have a lot more information about our website. I didn't want to go into too much more detail than that, but just acknowledge that this is fluid, like many of our sections, right? How we kind of define ourselves can evolve over time, and it certainly will evolve in the coming years as needs change. So if you could go to the next slide. So I want to just highlight one of the main ways in which, so I was asked to talk a little bit of how we engage with AGU staff, and then I'll give some more concrete examples here in a minute and hopefully open it up to discussion. And it'll be maybe focused a little bit more sometimes around the work that we do in the area of science policy and government relations. But let me just first start with one of the ways in which we've interacted with AGU staff as a whole. And so as a section, every year we, as an executive committee, which is made up of our leads of those different tracks we had on the last slide, as well as, of course, our honors rep, our early career and student reps, our fall meeting planning committee reps, that we have an executive committee retreat every March. That's virtual, of course, and we had our third one just last week. And that this actual retreat is done in collaboration with AGU staff. So if you look on if you're able to look at and zoom in on the slide here, you'll see that some of the folks in this in our retreat are actually other faces that you'll see on this call that are AGU staff. And so typically over the years, depending upon what we want to focus on as a section, we've interacted directly with those involved in the Thriving Earth Exchange. We've talked directly with those that are focused on sharing science program, publications. We had a great discussion with publications in our last retreat. And so one of the ways in which we've interacted with staff is really to just directly engage them in our activities and our brainstorming sessions, right? Because it allows us to find things that AGU staff have already started to think about or thinking about for different reasons. And then we can work on, okay, well, how can we work together to have a webinar series, for example? So let me go to the next slide, if you don't mind, and I'll give a couple examples. And then at one point, I think I have a colleague or two that's online that wants to also provide just some additional context. So some of the ways in which we've collaborated with AGU is really through organizing sessions and discussion series at the fall meeting and actually outside of the fall meeting. And so just to highlight a couple examples, of course, we have sessions at AGU that are focused on our tracks. And so that's one of the ways in which we organize the fall meeting. Is around tracks. But in addition, we have opportunities to come up with new innovative sessions, or there's been times in which we've worked directly with the science policy folks to actually have science policy folks now, I mean, within AGU staff on having informal roundtable discussion. So before a session at 8:30 in the morning on the first day of a fall meeting, right, when everybody needs coffee and the lines are long at the Starbucks on the way to the conference center, we've hosted where we actually have coffee right in the session room with some leaders that we have from government that might be speaking that day. And in these informal settings that we've hosted and formed with staff, we're able to engage and provide opportunities for scientists, for early career and students that might be interested in a career in policy to sit down and actually interact directly with somebody that works at OSTP or directly with somebody that works on the Hill. And so this is one of the ways in which we've worked to do this very informally with staff. And I'm gonna call on a colleague in a minute because I actually have a slide related to one of the other ways in which we've worked with AGU. We've also had participation amongst our section related to the position statement activities. Oftentimes there's an overlap with people that are on the position statement committee or task force, depending upon, I think, what it's called now, I always forget, in which they've interacted both through the working directly through volunteers, but also we work sometimes in our brainstorming around retreat to come up with ideas of, oh, this would be, it would be interesting if we consider putting in a position statement proposal, for example. So these are the types of ways we've interacted with staff related to that. We've directly interacted with staff around webinar planning and implementation of a webinar series that our section hosts. So last year we had a webinar series almost every 3 weeks starting in the summer that focused on our tracks and focused on discussion around some of these topics. And we worked directly with AGU staff on branding and making sure that what are the best practices, right, for webinar implementation and all these type of things. And so this is an example of something that was kind of started on, in our retreat. We really want to have a webinar series, and then we turned to AGU staff and had and had a variety of calls to brainstorm how we could do this, what's the most practical way, what's worked in the past, because AGU staff have a lot of experience in running these type of webinars, as we're on one right now. And then I'll just hit on a couple points. Additional points. As a new section, we never had an honor. We never had our own award. And so over the last couple of years, due to some of our great volunteers, we've actually worked with AGU staff on how to not only implement a new award for our section, but also, we iterated quite a bit on how do we actually do something that's different, because the area of science and society, a lot like a lot of our other sections work, is becoming highly collaborative, right? And so through interactions with the honors team, we were actually able to put in a proposal for an award that's actually AGU's first team award. And so this is just an example. We didn't come up with the proposal on our own. We came up with the proposal through having a variety of discussions with the honors team about how this would be possible. How would we, have to change the way, it was even hard within the form, the nominating or the form to submit the idea for a new proposal, right? We had to iterate on that because that wasn't even a function of having it be a team award. So we found that the staff are very collaborative to work with us on how to do something that's a little bit outside the kind of norm in which we've done in the past. And then, of course, we've worked directly with AGU staff on building external partnerships outside of AGU with different types of professional societies related to, for example, social and behavioral sciences. And there's been areas of opportunity in which we've worked and we've already had discussions this year about maybe starting to co-sponsor AGU specific sessions at other meetings outside of the traditional geophysical disciplines that might be related to science and society. So if we could go to the next, I'm going to go through the next series of slides really quick, and then I'm going to call on a colleague to provide an example. So here's just a real quick example of our roundtable that we had at this past fall meeting in Chicago, where we had a discussion with some folks that work right in DC and policy, and that these are the brave people that showed up early and got there, so they avoided the long line for their badges for sure. And you could see we had a great show in which we had this very informal discussion with science policy leaders. And this was something that we organized directly with the science policy and government relations team kind of in the 2 months before the fall meeting. If you could go to the next slide. And so we've also had a lot of innovative sessions over the years in which we've organized working directly with staff. So I think my colleague Kate might be on. Kate, did you want to jump on and talk a little bit about the art and science activities that you guys have organized?
Sure, yeah. Just take a quick minute here, but we were really excited at this last fall meeting. AGU staff were incredibly supportive. Lauren, Parr, and Debbie and Jim were all really, really helpful in all of these art science activities that we organize that you see listed here. In addition to just the regular sessions that Kevin was mentioning that all of the tracks have, we also did a virtual exhibit that had over around 100 pieces with about 60 artists that contributed pieces. We also had the AGU 22 community poem, which there was a poem starter that one of the plenary artists, Kim Blazer, created called Dear Earth, Dear Planet, Dear Sky. And then we were asking for contributions to add to that poem. And I believe right now AG is working on a video that showcases the results of that poem, which is really awesome to see. And then we had a really high profile plenary. It was amazing that AGU gave us the space for that, where we had 5 artists on stage with Dr. Mika Tosca, talking about the integration of science and art and how it helps with understanding issues such as the climate crisis. And so it's just been wonderful to work with the staff, and we're very thankful for that. I should also mention we had an in-person art exhibit that was outside the exhibit hall with several of the plenary artists in that, and we're hopeful to have a repeat on-site art exhibit this next fall meeting, and building off of the momentum of all of that. So I'll back over to Kevin.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, so if you could just go forward, there's just a couple more examples we'll just go through. So here's an example of how we worked with AGU staff on our Science and Society Dialogues webinar discussion series that occurred every 3 weeks starting last summer. And so so we did most of the organization behind the scenes, but AGU staff was able to help us, for example, with simple things to make us look really authentic, right? With the branding, as well as how do we reach out to all the different networks for participation in the webinar series. And then next slide. And one of the things I haven't mentioned, but we also have worked and we're starting to work even more around the honors program. Particularly, one of the things that our section is really passionate about is revamping the Outstanding Student Poster Awards. And so last year we actually piloted within our own section, and I know a few other sections are doing some similar things. A different rubric and increased guidance to our judges for how to judge our student posters and presentations. And this is something that we'd love to work with other sections as well as AGU. We already had some initial conversations at our retreat about how we could maybe help to make some of this become the norm AGU wide if other sections think it's useful and if AGU thinks it's useful. And then I think I just have one more slide and I'll stop because I'm going longer than I said I would, which is just here's an example of one of the other ways that I already mentioned, which is through the first team award within AGU, and it's called the Science and Society Team Award. And I just love how awesome this project was. So I just want to mention that we gave out our first award last year, and it went to the Unlearning Racism and Geoscience team. And so it's a quick plug. If you know of any people that are any teams that are working in the area of science and society, we have a couple more weeks for nominations. So please nominate some or remind your colleagues to. So I'll finish there. And I don't know. I know that maybe some of the AGU staff, maybe if I didn't highlight everything that we had talked about, so I'm happy to answer any questions or provide additional context.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks so much for that. A lot of good information on how a section can collaborate. I wonder, we've got Lexi and Liz on from the science policy team. I wonder if one of you want to chime in kind of on the staff side of how that worked.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
We can kind of hear you.
Hang on a second. Okay.
That's better. That's better.
Okay. Yeah, we're actually physically in one location, so we're sort of sharing computers and sounds and so forth. I just wanted to thank Kevin for running through a lot of the work that we've done together, and obviously so many other parts of AGU. With regard to science and society, one of the things that's been so incredibly valuable is that there's been some cases where we've invited the leaders of that section to participate or to assist with some things, but they've also invited us to participate and assist with some of their priorities and goals. And that's how we came to be included in the Science and Society, executive committee calls, the strategic retreat. And that was really valuable on all sides, I would say. And then also, in many ways, Science and Society is a natural home for the science policy team because science policy is one of their tracks. But we've also done some similar activities with other sections as well. So many times sections have brought policy issues to us and said, what are your views on this? Are you aware of it? Will you consider taking things on? In other cases, they've suggested position statements, and we kind of walk through the process of what that looks like. So, and we've done, some of the sections have policy committees, and they've worked closely with us as well. So just a variety of different ways of approaching it. Liz, did you want to add anything or?
I think that was great coverage. I appreciate that, Lexi. Thank you.
Okay, great. So does anyone have, I see a few things in the chat where you guys are connecting with Kevin. So that's great. That's what we want, right? For you guys to talk to each other and collaborate. And wondering if folks have any other examples or want to, oh, Adina, go ahead. I see your hand up.
Yeah, I have a question. So these new section, I don't know if they have sessions at the AGU or something like that. I wonder if it makes sense to coordinate. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Adina. I can hear you,
Okay.
Adina.
Rosa got frozen. That's why I was asking. Anyway, I was wondering if it makes sense to try and coordinate with the planning committee to cross-list this or encourage that each section, like I'm in ocean science or in paleoclimate, to have at least one thing that is relevant to science and society within that is cross-listed specifically on a topic relevant to a certain subgroup. So, you know, if you're going to volcanology, it could be something about, or, you know, earthquakes or something along these lines. How is that relevant to society and informing them? I'm just trying to make this, to find out if it could be a little bit more integrated as opposed to a completely separate session, because the whole idea is that it is integrated, is that we are using the scientific knowledge of all of the other disciplines to communicate and involve society.
Yeah, so I can just maybe respond quickly, which is I think, you know, as a section, and I think similar to a lot of our other leaders right on the call, I think we are certainly open to working on you know, cross-listed sessions at AGU meetings. So that's something we're open to, and I think part of it is just, you know, making the right connections. But I think, you know, I think your other point, if I'm interpreting it correctly, about the fact that you know, the section, science and society section as an example, and the same could be true for some other sections like education, right? Are really, they're not necessarily sometimes, of course they are their own discipline in a sense. You know, the scholarship around education and methodologies is separate than education of different science disciplines. But to some extent, they have a little bit of a different nature in the sense that they do also span a lot of the activities and work within other sections. And I think that having a broader discussion maybe at a future meeting about how we do that, I think would be really valuable.
Great, thanks for that, Kevin. I'm looking at the chat and I'm seeing some really good feedback in terms of this meeting, right? And how we can look at, I think, a topic of interest, if I'm reading this right, and focus on that. Kevin, there's a few things here for you around the rubric. Yep, Danny, I'm seeing your feedback as well. Let's see, it's great information. It seemed to have a little time. Yeah, I mean, we can certainly kind of look at that and see what the best way is to structure these meetings if folks want to hear more. The point is to have folks hear more from the sections and more from each other. So we can certainly do a deeper dive on topics if I'm reading this right. All right, am I missing anything else in the chat or that anyone wants to jump in on before we go to the next topic? No, well, Kevin, we really appreciate your jumping in with us and getting starting us off right with these monthly meetings. We do want to keep doing these section spotlights. So I would ask if anyone wants to be the next section to talk about something in the context of maybe a bigger topic or a specific topic, put something in the chat or get in touch with me because we would love to structure this meeting in a way that works for you all to learn from each other. And I'm also going to give a little bit of a shout out to my colleagues. I'm having some connectivity issues. So Amber or Greg, if I freeze again, like I just did, just feel free to jump in. So sorry about that. You probably all heard me saying, hello, I lost you. Okay, anyway, thank you so much, Kevin. Oh, Kimberly, go ahead.
So I was going to say that in some ways it's a +1 to what Danny wrote, that but I feel like Kevin kind of did this. I like the idea of learning a little bit more about where each section is. Like Kevin said, here is what science and society is. It's nice to sort of be refreshed on what's, going on in each section, and also to have a piece that is like what I need for the section support. Like I want more guidance on what others are doing for DEI and what others are doing to form their, like, any things that came up for them regarding, all of a sudden I'm blanking because I get stage fright, but but things like that as a involved in volunteer leadership for my section. Or I guess I already said DEI. I can't think, like public policy, but how do you do that? How do you get your sections engaged with AGU? I mean, public policy, there's some obvious relationships, but I like the idea of maybe having a little bit of both. And at the meeting we had in March, you kind of gave us a little bit of a structure for that. I don't know if you do that for us now for the section highlights, but that would be great too. So just a few sections, and thanks. It was great, Kevin, to hear what is going on with your section.
Great. Thank you, Kimberly. That's really good feedback. And, I've heard from others of you, if there's, again, kind of connected to the council meeting, because the council is more than the section leaders, right? But if there's a way to kind of continue the conversation in these meetings and other ways, we want to facilitate that. So, all right, why don't we go to the next topic and go to the next slides. So section event planning. So Suzanne of the meetings team and I are going to talk about this. Don't be surprised if you get short or longer updates every month as we get closer to the meeting. But we want to make sure, like I said, that we do this right around section planning, section event planning, and make sure there's a lot of communication as we go along the way. So let me give you some updates on some dates that you can expect and also some meetings. So what we're going to do is a couple of folks on my team, Greg, who many of you know, and Josh McKee, who isn't here today, but I think you all know him very well now because he's our new section support coordinator, and he's reached out to you on a lot of things, including how to get into this meeting today. But they are going to set up one-on-one meetings with you all to really go through your section event planning. Those meetings are going to take place between April 10th and May 19th is when they have availability. I think probably as early as tomorrow or Friday, you'll see an email from Greg Binder on my team, who's going to have a link for you all, like a scheduling link. So whoever it is that you all have in place, your point person for scheduling and thinking about your goals around those meetings. I know in some cases, it may be one of you all, like a section president or president-elect, or it could be that you're delegating it to someone else in your executive committee, or maybe you have a subcommittee that deals with the fall meeting. We want to make sure at the very beginning, we're talking to the right person all along the way, right? So you can identify who that person is, set up the meetings when Greg sends the email that has a little bit more information, including, like I said, a scheduling link. The first thing, aside from the one-on-one meetings, is that soon on April 7th, you're going to get a questionnaire. For those of you who've done this in the past, you'll get a questionnaire, a survey, a form that's kind of long, right? But it includes all of the information that we need, particularly early on, in terms of what meetings you want to do at fall meeting as a section. What are your goals around them? And other information as well. So we're going to do that intake. My hope is that you fill out that form before you sign up for your one-on-one meeting, right? So that they can have something to talk to you about. But they can also use the one-on-one meeting to walk through the form with you if you want to do it that way. The completed forms are going to be due May 26th. I won't go through all of the timing. Josh actually gave me a list of dates that's much longer than this, that really impacts the planning of the meetings team, which Suzanne will talk about, and other things. It's kind of a domino effect. If we don't hit that May 26th meeting, there may be a delay with other things and a delay with other things that we ask you for. So just kind of be on the lookout for that. And then July 22nd is another milestone date where we'll ask you for a comp attendee list. But why don't we keep going? I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne so she can talk a little bit more about, refamiliarize you with the types of section event meetings. And then we're going to poll you and ask you what your goals are around section events at fall meeting. But Suzanne, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Rosa. Hi, everyone. I'm Suzanne Davison, Director of Meetings. And just to go back to the deadlines, one of the milestone deadlines that is not listed, and we can update it when we send out these slides, but just a reminder that the session proposal deadline for the scientific program is April 12th. And so I just want to add that to your list of deadlines that are critical. As far as your events, yes, as Rosa mentioned, you'll be working with her team to organize all the various events for sections. And I'm just going to give you an overview of the 3 types of events that we work with you guys on planning for San Francisco. So the first one is always your executive committee meetings, which those meetings can be hosted before or after fall meeting. There's no registration required. There's no time constraints. You'll work with the section team to get your Zoom link. And that, as I said, you'll work directly with the section team to organize those. The in-person only, those are a little different because those are on site in San Francisco. Registration is required to participate. All those, the section committee meetings will be held at the Marriott Marquis Hotel, which I think many of you are familiar with. And then again, there'll be 2 time slots for these meetings. You'll have a morning time slot for a breakfast, and then you'll have a lunch time slot. Those times that are listed are subject to change. Right now, we are in review of doing an overview of the scientific program schedule, so those could shift a little. And RSVPing for these in-person committee meetings is very important because there is food and beverage that is involved, and we need to be able to give the venue the final guarantee. And if for the in-person only, AV is not required, but if you feel that you need AV, you can work with your section team to place that order. And then the third option is hybrid, which you can do in-person participation, or you could also have the virtual participation. Registration is required for anybody who is participating at the in-person. But if you're attending virtually, you will not have to be registered. And the same applies, same time slots, and there will be internet and electrical and a Zoom link will be provided by the section team. And again, we just ask if you're in person that you RSVP, because again, we are supporting this event for food and beverage, and we just want to make sure that we're not, seeing food go to waste. So it's just really critical that we know who is attending. Next slide. So then the second type of event that you guys have are your section gatherings, which are your business meetings and networking events. And those are held on Tuesdays, either at lunchtime or in the evening, the Tuesday evening reception. You have 3 options again. You have the virtual option the week prior to host the business meeting, a kind of a networking engagement. And then you also have the in-person option for either a luncheon or a reception. And this is also where the in-person and for the luncheon and the receptions, AGU provides that $50 subsidy to go towards the event. And that's based on your final guarantees for the event. And then you can also host these as well as hybrid. And you would need to work with your section team member to just arrange anything for AV. And those are going to be a little bit more expensive, but once we know how many people, how many sections are doing the hybrid, we can work with the venue on getting our costs down. Next slide. And then the last slide I have is the early career and student events. These are in-person only. Right, the in-person only is for socializing and networking events. We locate them in one of the meeting space contracted at either the Marriott Marquis or the Intercontinental Hotel. We no longer do these off-site, and there are no bars for the students. And they can also be a presentation and discussion, which we would work with you again on AV and keeping that cost down. And then the other option is hybrid, where you would be able to do a presentation and discussion to bring the virtual audience in as well. And so those three types of events, this is where they're going to do some polling just to see, your focus for the meeting. And then, Greg and Josh will work with you on those one-on-ones.
Great, thank you, Suzanne. Why don't we do the poll now before there's a few things in the chat and probably a few questions. Suzanne, is that a good time now to do the poll? Yeah, yep. Good. So Hannah or Greg, if you could put the poll up, and this is around your goals. So I'm going to give you a minute or so to fill this out, and then we will see what the results are. But so what are your goals for your section events in San Francisco? Do you want to recognize honorees, recruit? Are you getting together with the executive committees to set section goals? You're meeting in person, virtually with your section committees, executive committees, networking for early career, other. And you can choose as many as you like. So Hannah or Greg, what do you think? Do we have enough that we want to look at?
We're still getting responses. Yep.
Okay. We'll give you a minute or less.
Looks like we have 26 folks who've responded so far of the 50 some that are on the call.
Anyone else want to join in before we look at the results? Okay, why don't we go ahead and see what we've got?
Okay. We should be seeing results. Let me know if you're unable to.
Yep. All right. Look at that. 86% meet with your executive committees.
Wait, I can't see it. How are we supposed to see it?
Oh, are folks able to see this?
It flashed up and then it was gone.
Oh, you may have by accident closed it.
No, I didn't click. I mean, I was typing something into chat, so it could be that.
I see it, and it looks like Colleen can see it too.
Yeah, why don't I read it very quickly? So I'm going to do it let me see if I can figure it out and actually do it in the order of number here. So meet with section executive committee in person, 86%. Actually, I'll say meet with section executive committee virtually is 24%. Again, I'm not going in order. Let's see, offer networking opportunities for students and early career members, 83%. What's the next one? Recognize honorees, section honorees, 38%, recruit section members, 34%. Set section goals for the coming year, 31%. I think I missed one in the middle. Offer networking opportunities for current members, 69%. And then other, I'm going to go ahead and close this on mine, was to put things in the chat. Oh, that was nice of you. Someone put it in the chat. Thank you for the screen grab. I appreciate that. All right. So that's what we've got. Does anyone want to ask any questions or raise their hand while Suzanne and I are kind of perusing the chat here? Or Suzanne, did you see anything you wanted to respond to? Let's see, a lot about the poll, but thank you for taking the poll. It's very helpful to us.
I can't
Okay.
figure out how to raise my hand all of a sudden.
Go ahead.
You'd be
Go ahead.
surprised.
Just
I was just typing this, but I tried to set up a pod for last year for like a meet the section representatives and things like that. Like almost no one came. And I think that partly no one just knew about it. Like I kept on saying, did you know about it? You know, we advertised it kind of to the best of our little ability, but to get AGU help on that, I would love that. We wanted it as a time for members to network a little bit and also to like come to, you know, I thought about this when I saw the like set goals or network or communicate goals. The pods offer a great opportunity, but I don't know how to advertise them better than I did. And I already know that it was terrible, but like help getting better at that would be wonderful.
Hi, Kimberly. Yeah, we can work, you know, we can kind of review that on that communication plan. We kind of discussed that for other pods that we were doing in AGU Central. And we do recognize that people aren't aware of what's taking place in the pods. So we can work with the marketing team on how we kind of publicize anybody who's trying to promote something that's happening in a pod.
That would be great. And even sort of just spontaneously, I just thought if there's pods that like the first X number of pods are associated with one of the sections, then the sections might know that that would be the default drop-in place. It doesn't mean that they have to have, you know, like other people can reserve them, but maybe, yeah, that would be the default place to drop in for a social place.
Okay, yeah, we'll, you know, work on a plan for that. But thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Sure, and it would be great to work with you as the time approaches, so I could give you some insights on how our community chats, you know, not just to wait and see how you guys do it. I mean, I think that you have lots of great ideas, and maybe I would only have tweaks, but maybe I might have some helpful comments, and other people who are part of the meeting might as well.
Yeah, definitely. We can work with you.
Thanks a lot.
Great, thank you. Danny.
Struggling to unmute, I apologize. And I'm going to keep my camera off. I sort of have the post dentist, my face is, you know, sort of sliding off my head right now. So I am curious if this is the right time, but I would love some help on, this is more like front-loaded fall meeting planning to communicate with our section. We had a former section president who was great at cheerleading as session abstracts were being submitted, and they had access to numbers sort of chronologically as the close to session, the session call came up. And so she would be able to say, we're at only 80%, or we're at only 50% of last year's session abstracts by this time. And I would love to continue that. And I don't know how, I've already reached out to her and I haven't heard anything back about how she was able to do this. And so I'm curious if we want to sort of, you know, I don't know, promote and sort of cheerlead to get increased sessions. Is there a way to access that type of data?
The person before probably was getting it from the FMPC rep, which they have access for that information. So I can, yeah, put you in touch with your rep, and they would be able to provide that information to you.
I have been in touch with them, and maybe rotating in for the first time. So she's asking even more questions about like what specifically I want. So I am going to try and keep going down that route. But
Okay.
just knowing that they have access to that, that would be great. And maybe I'll encourage them to reach out to fall meeting, you know, the larger committee to try and do that. But thank you for that. I appreciate at least the confirmation.
Yeah, and I will inform Nicole Oliphant, who's our Director of Scientific Program, just, you know, information what you're looking for. And she can also work with your rep to make sure you get the information.
Great, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Great, and thanks, Nicole. It looks like you've already chimed in the chat, so thank you for that. So you see her, Nicole's contact information there. Hannah, thanks for answering the question here about the EC and student events. All right, I'm going to stop there because we have one more topic, but any kind of last moment items, even though we'll be talking about this again next month as well. And please do the one-on-one calls because you can really get into the weeds on some of these questions that you might have. So anything else for the moment? All right. So let's go to the next topic, which I think is me. Yeah, so just very quickly, a reminder that we're really 2 weeks away, literally 2 weeks away from the deadline to nominate folks for honors nominations. We are not extending the date. I've already gotten that question. We don't want folks to get into the habit of thinking that's going to happen. So the 12th of April is the date. We do encourage you, if you're, you know, if it's not a conflict of interest, to nominate, and it's not a conflict for you to promote and let other people know in your networks that the cycle's still open for the next couple of weeks. If we can go to the next page. These are our numbers as of, I think, yesterday. I hope you all are noticing that every Wednesday or Thursday, it might be tomorrow in this case, we do send to the section leaders and actually to all the membership, it's usually under Hannah's name, Hannah Hoffman, an update, a weekly update of where we are and where the trends are. Looks a little different than this, but it has this information. Also make sure, because a couple of you asked me this at the council meeting a few weeks ago, if we have a deep dive on section information, there is an attachment in those section leader weekly and membership weekly updates. I think what you may be focusing on is that we put a snapshot of a rolled up list of just the 3 programs, the UMAP and sections and fellows. But if you click on the attachment that's there, and it's been there for the last few weeks, you can actually look at it by section and see where the nominations are as of that week. So this is where we're at. Total submissions among the 3 buckets, we're at 86. We have a lot of partials. We understand, and I've been here through 2 cycles or almost 2 cycles of this program. I've been with AGU about 1.5 years. I see that in the last 2 weeks, and in some cases, the last week is when this kind of builds up and a lot of people wait till last minute. With that being the case, please feel free to promote and let people know about the program. We want to make sure that we're honoring and recognizing, you know, regardless of career stage, regardless of institution, and that we're looking at the full breadth of folks who can be nominated. Let's go to the next slide. This is an example of a Canva card that you all can use on social media. We have done customized ones per section. This is for atmospheric sciences. I hope the atmospheric science folks, if there anyone on here, have actually seen this, that you can use it. But we do have built-in communications that we've pulled together. Some is generic and some is specific like this. If you go to the next slide. There's a lot of information here, and we're recording this, and we're going to be sending the PowerPoint and recording so you can follow this, but this is how you find it. You all actually have libraries in your section microsites where we put things in them, including promotional materials in case you didn't know. There's other things in there too that Josh and Greg can tell you about. But if you see that arrow there, if you go through your section leadership library and go through this track here, you see the arrow. It says 2023 social media cards. That's where you can find these things by section. And if there's something you need that you don't see here, please get in touch with Josh or Greg, because they can get in touch with the honors team, who can get in touch with communications, who can do more targeted marketing if it's needed. We have so many awards, it's hard to do something for every item, but we try best as we can. Next slide. All right, so that's where we are. We've got about 5 minutes left. So any questions that anyone has that you want to share? I'm also looking at the chat real quick. All right, so it looks like these things are getting answered in the chat. All right, anyone have any questions? They want to raise their hand or shout out? Anyone off the top of your head as a section want to be spotlighted, or a topic that you want spotlighted? Anyone want to talk about that or stick that in the chat? All right. Well, thanks for joining us for this meeting. We look forward to meeting with you monthly and talking to you more frequently, of course. And with that, I will let you guys go. Have a good one. See you next time.
Thanks so much, Rosa and
Thank
team.
you. Thanks.